Welcome into the DNVR Rockies podcast, brought to you by Strava Craft Coffee. Remember to use your promo code DNVR25. You'll get 25% off your entire purchase of that CBD infused, deliciously rich, and potentially life-altering Strava Craft Coffee. I'm your host, Drew Kreisman. I'm the managing editor of DNVR Rockies. With me, as always, is beat writer Patrick Lyons. And joining us, as has become our weekly custom, is the voice of the Colorado Rockies on AT&T Sportsnet and the host of the Drew Goodman podcast. It's Drew Goodman, coming to us from someplace absolutely beautiful. Look at the sky and the green behind you. Living the dream.
The 19th hole, Drew. I think that's what it's called.
So is that what we call this? The 19th hole? Yeah, I'll take it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, good views.
So, of course, we've got a big series here coming up. I don't know if y'all have heard, but St. Louis Cardinals coming to town. Their third baseman used to play for the Rockies. So we'll talk a little bit about all of that stuff. But before we do, Goody, so close to it, obviously we broke it down in a lot of details, but I just wanted to get your take on our man Márquez, the dance with destiny, coming one dinky little hit away from being the first Rockies pitcher to throw a no-hitter at Coors Field, and really just what that moment felt like and was like to be a part of it this moment in time.
Well, it was, I guess, a lot of things. It was a blast. It was something I believe we will see again. And I think he'll complete it. I really do. I mean, he's now, I don't know what the number is. He's taken no-hitters into the sixth inning, which is, that always gets your radar up, right? You get through the fifth, your radar goes up. And he's done that now, on several occasions. And he has the stuff. I mean, there are a lot of guys, as nobody would know better than you two, that have thrown no-hitters that, were more or less kind of journeymen, and the planets aligned, and a lot of atom balls, and they had their day in the sun, if you will. And then there's guys on that list that have stuff where you go, whoa, that guy has the stuff when things are right to throw a no-hitter on any given afternoon or evening. And Germán falls into that grouping, because he has such a devastating slider. He's got easy cheese, at 97, 98 miles an hour. So we'll see that again. I really thought, maybe like all of you, that he was going to get it done when Trevor made that remarkable catch off of Jacob Stallings in the eighth. He felt like it was destiny. And so when it got to the ninth and he hung that curveball and a kid who's hitting 131, Kuai Tom hits a clean line drive to right. It was, there was no, there was nothing about it that suggested, boy, that was iffy. It was kind of like a big letdown. It's a big letdown, certainly for him, certainly for his teammates, but, for all fans. And from a broadcaster standpoint, you were like bummed, man. He was so close. You know how difficult it is to even arrive anywhere close to the ninth inning with a no-hitter. But it was a remarkable performance. And then you couple it with what he's done recently, perfect for into the sixth inning in Seattle, 4 hits over 3 starts. Are you kidding me? I mean, that's otherworldly stuff.
We talked about this exact thing happening, I think it was either last week or the week before that, about Márquez and his no-hit stuff and how unique it is to this organization and how, he should be able to get one. And now, after seeing what we did Tuesday night, he will get one. You just kind of hope that, much like with Tom Seaver and Laron Lee, and now you've got Kai Tom, that when Márquez does get it done, it is with the Rockies and not another organization, because he's just been incredibly lights out. And he's got another start still coming up on Sunday at Coors Field. I don't think it really matters, but Goody, do you think his stuff plays better at Coors Field? Is that possible than on the road, or it doesn't really matter what ballpark he's in? He's got a solid chance to throw a no-hitter.
Well, I think it matters what ballpark he's in. That's the thing that made it potentially even more remarkable. We've seen one no-hitter, as everybody knows who follows the Rockies, it was 96 in Hideo Nomo pre-Humidor, which, I mean, it's still amazing that he was able to throw a no-hitter in the the Blake Street Bombers in '96. So, but it does make a difference. I mean, if you throw one at Dodger Stadium, it's still crazy good. Petco, crazy good. San Francisco, crazy, amazing, right? But to throw it at Coors Field, where every ball off the bat has a better than most places chances of falling because of how cavernous the outfield is. I don't understand. I can't explain. I get this question all the time. I'm sure you guys do as well. Why is the Rockies starting rotation so good at home? And they were good on this last road trip. Why they've been so much better at home than on the road, it doesn't make a lot of sense. No, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Though, as a group, and I think this is the best group of starters the Rockies have ever had, they embrace pitching at Coors Field. They truly enjoy pitching at Coors Field. They don't look at it as a disadvantage. I've had enough conversations, as I'm sure you guys have as well, with the Freelands and the Grays and the Hermans of the world, that no, they don't. They're not intimidated at all. And the numbers support what they're saying and what we're kind of regurgitating of what they're saying.
Yeah, you bring that up, and I'm working on this article right now, and I want to get your take on this, because when we were having this conversation yesterday about how do you measure, what are the elements of a start that are the most important to you if you're talking about the greatest starting pitching performances in the history of the Colorado Rockies, and however you group those things together, the ones that I'm taking a look at, you've got two now from Márquez, what he just did, what he did in San Francisco in 2019. You've got Kyle Freeland taking a no-hitter into the ninth at Coors Field against the White Sox a few years ago. You've got John Gray with his 16 strikeouts at Coors Field against the Padres. And then obviously Ubaldo Jimenez actually throwing the only no-hitter. And all those games have these kind of drastically different elements to them. But to your point, to what you were just saying, and to what we've been saying going back to the offseason, that this is the best group of starting pitchers the Colorado Rockies have ever had. Three of those guys we're talking about all on the team right now and still in their mid-20s. So, when you're looking at the greatest pitching performances in Rockies history, but to that question, do you need to see if it's a 12 or 13 strikeout no-hitter? Is that more impressive to you than say, you get 5 strikeouts, but it's a perfect game? Those kinds of things. Efficiency. Márquez had the 92 pitches, right? The Greg Maddux complete game shutout in under 100 pitches. We know Ubaldo threw the no-hitter, but lots of traffic, walked like 6 guys getting on second base. He was in trouble at times. Márquez, never in trouble. So which of those things do you prioritize, do you think make for the greatest pitching performances?
Well, you guys are familiar with game score, the Bill James came up with, where I don't have it in front of me, but you get positives for innings pitched naturally. You get a demerit for runs, even for unearned runs, for hits. You get pluses for strikeouts, for not walking guys, all of those things. So from a game score standpoint, I know 2 of the top 5 game scores all time in Rockies history are owned by Herman. Yeah. The greatest game score was the 16 strikeout performance, John Gray's game against the Padres a few years back. I think when you punch out a lot of guys and don't give up many hits and maybe throw a complete game shutout, it really jumps off the page at you, because it screams dominance. It's not like, okay, he struck out, a half dozen, the ball was in play, and fortunately it hit at fielders and that sort of thing. But with Herman, even on the days where he doesn't strike out an abundance of guys, the balls in play are typically mishit ground balls. They're jam shots. I mean, if you're able to watch the game and not just view the box score, the raw numbers, you can see dominance even if it doesn't include an inordinate number of strikeouts.
Yeah, you talked about that a little bit as you opened this week's episode of the Drew Goodman podcast with Brendan Rodgers. And, one thing that you mentioned on the topic of starting pitching is, and this is something that Drew Kreisman has said here, is the possibility of John Gray even re-signing and keeping this core group of pitchers together, the greatest that the franchise has ever, brought together. And John obviously loves Denver, and I think he really feels Colorado is his home. Do you think there's a chance that, bringing him back in particular could create somewhat of a logjam in the starting rotation? And is that necessarily a bad thing when you've got a lot of young, talented arms coming up in the system like the Rolison, Oliveras, and whatnot?
Well, I don't think that. First of all, I do subscribe to that notion. You can never have too much starting pitching.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the Dodgers. I mean, you can never have too much starting pitching. And I wouldn't, I would question respectfully, whether the Rockies have a logjam. I mean, Freeland, the last two starts, has looked like the Kyle Freeland of 2018. It's been awesome to see. Herman is a horse, right?
Yeah.
Austin Gomber's been, I don't want to call it a revelation, because he really, he got his feet wet with St. Louis, 14 games. I think there were 6 starts, and he had the 186 earned run average in the truncated season of last year. But you've seen clearly that, this guy can be a solid middle of the rotation guy. John Gray, over a number of years, has done really nice things by and large in a Rockies uniform. Senzatella, really solid kind of back end of the rotation guy. But beyond that, I mean, I hope Ryan Rolison comes up and can, be a really good, obviously a really good Rocky starting pitcher. Oliveras is a long way off. I was looking at his numbers the other day. He walks a lot of guys. He's a young kid with a big arm in the low minor leagues. There's not an abundance of starting pitch. I mean, they were raving about Ryan Castellani, a year ago, or speaking highly, I should say. I don't want to say raving, but speaking highly of Ryan Castellani, who was a fairly high draft pick, and he was DFA'd a few days ago. So the Rockies, it's not like there's a long list of guys. They do have, to your point, Drew, this really strong nucleus that, knock on wood, even though that's not wood, I'm pretending.
I was going to say,
has stayed healthy in an industry where, I've said this many times, there's 3 guarantees in life: death, taxes, and pitchers get hurt.
Yeah.
And their group has stayed together. They're in different areas of their prime. They're still a very young group. And that's why, I know Patrick was kind of alluding to this. I had this thought on the podcast this week that, maybe you don't do the full-fledged, I should say, stripped down, and you trade everybody that you can get something for. And maybe you start building around what we've all discussed many times, and you guys have on your show numerous times, the fact that the strength of this organization right now at the major league level is that rotation. So maybe, you got to build up the farm system again, and maybe it's done through the, smaller deals, Michael Givens, CJ Cron, that ilk of deal. And John Gray's a different kid, man. And I mean that positively.
Yeah.
He really loves pitching here, and he loves being a Rocky. And maybe it's not about, knowing John a little bit, it's not about breaking the bank. And maybe you can keep John in the mix and build around that group, and then go out and sign, even if they were to lose Trevor, trade Trevor, but then sign, some other guys position player wise to augment that rotation. Because if you finally get offensively where you want and need to be, what if that group of pitchers no longer is in their prime? You know what I mean? It's always about baseball symmetry, right? You gotta be pretty good in all the facets to have a legitimate contending team.
And it's easier to buy that facet on the offensive side than the pitching side, right? Like those for that homegrown talent is huge. And the Rockies have that money to spend, so they can very easily do something like that. And so, yeah, you go out and you want to keep John Gray. It's not going to cost you a ton, but who else are you going to be spending that money on? Because the payrolls has been going down a lot, and they've got a lot of freedom there.
Yeah, I mean, a couple thoughts on that, Patrick. And think about this. The sport will always be about pitching. Always, 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 always. It will always be about pitching. I mean, the greatest offensive player in the game the last, whatever it is, 7, 8 years is Mike Trout. Mike Trout hasn't sniffed the postseason, right? Barely. They have, I know he's hurt right now, and they'll get him back after the All-Star break. They have him in concert with Shohei Ohtani, who's just a revelation, right? What a marvelous talent. He's Babe Ruth, but allowing Babe Ruth to do both, I guess, right? Yeah. They still don't win. They still don't win. Here's something neat. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. Nolan rolls into town today, and I don't take what I'm about to say the wrong way. I wish Nolan Arenado was playing third base for the Colorado Rockies and has an 18-year career, and just like Todd Helton, never departed, and it wasn't, for however it came about, it didn't have to be. I wish 28 was a Rocky, right? Yeah. So I'm not suggesting otherwise. That's my preamble to what I'm about to say. Nolan has 16 home runs and 52 RBIs this year. He's hitting in the 260s. It's not a really, it's a really solid, especially by today's standards, really solid first half, kind of Nolan-esque, if you will. The Rockies' third baseman, which has mainly been Joshua Fuentes and Ryan McMahon. 16 home runs, 51 RBIs. Isn't that interesting?
That's funny. Life is, especially baseball life, is hilarious. That is, yeah.
And again, I'm not sitting here going, oh, they don't, they wouldn't be, better off with Nolan. Of course, your team is always better off with great players. But do they impact the one-loss column as much as we think they do?
Yeah, especially to your overall point, position players who get 4 at-bats a game, and maybe the ball is hit their direction. If you're lucky, the ball is hit in Nolan's direction because he's probably going to feel it, make a nice play. But
hey, Drew, that's why again, being very respectful of Jason Hayward, who helped the Cubs win a championship. Maybe the greatest thing he did was that rain speech in the locker room, right, during the delay, right? Jason Hayward signed, I believe, for like $186 million with the Cubs. He had a solid year with the Cardinals offensively. And the big selling point was he's the greatest right fielder in the sport. And I'm scratching my head. I'm going, okay, let me look at some metrics here. On average, he got 1.7 plays a game. 1.7 baseballs came in his direction during an evening.
Right.
Is he like 5? So let's extrapolate it. It's a busy week. They played 7 games. I'll even give him 2 a night.
Right.
So that's 14 times he's involved defensively in a busy week. Was he going over the wall and robbing a 3-run home run, 8 of those 14 times? Come on.
Right.
That's crazy.
Meanwhile, the guy on the bump is trying to get to 90 pitches at least. And that's less than, it's people from an earlier generation rant and rave. They're only throwing 90. Why can't these guys go over 100? But wherever you're at on that, that's 90 opportunities to make a mistake that loses your team the baseball game.
Right. What's been crazy, fellas, is the Rockies the last 8 games, their rotation has pitched to a 129 earned run average. 129. That's crazy good. Yeah. The Rockies' record is 4-4. Yeah. Takes me back to I'm on my soapbox now.
Let's go. Get going. Keep it going.
Right. It takes me back to my comment with you guys and on my own podcast about baseball symmetry. The Rockies are 4-4, despite the fact that their rotation has been otherworldly good the last 8 days, because the bullpen on the road faltered. If the bullpen was just decent on the road, the Rockies probably are sitting here 6-2 over those last 8 games, and it supports the notion and the historical empirical evidence and that yes, starters are the most important players on your team.
I like our guy Capway is also pointing out too that the Germán Márquez game came after the sticky stuff ruling. Love that. It is nice that it's like
and another, and I'm not saying this to defend Rockies pitchers, but they were never in that high spin rate group.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they did or didn't do. I assume the whole thing was widespread. It seems to have impacted, at least in terms of a reduction in spin rate. The greatest reduction in spin rate in the sport lies with the Dodgers since they've kind of cracked down.
Yeah.
But listen, I'd still want Clayton Kershaw and that group toeing the rubber for my team, whether they're using sticky stuff or not.
Yeah, to your point, that 1.29 ERA in the last 8 days, best in the National League and in the game. San Francisco is the next closest, 2.61. So a full run better than the second best. So,
but the record should be, Patrick, right? It's got to be better than 4-4 during that period of time.
Yeah.
But it also goes back in the bigger picture. Again, we were talking about, hey, what should if we were front office executives, if we were in the baseball operations side for the Rockies, how do we game plan to get back to contention while trying to, stockpile more players, future Rockies in the farm system? And I'm not so sure. I wouldn't strip it all down and say, listen, we have a really nice grouping of starting pitchers, one that you could see in a postseason and be competitive in a postseason, as we've seen in 17 and 18, right? So
build around those.
I would build around that.
Yeah.
Right now.
I'm with you there. That's kind of been my thinking for a while, particularly because of the age of these pitchers and the difficulty of building a staff like that in Colorado and keeping them around, as we've talked about. You can't buy that pitching staff. People like to point out the Chicago Cubs and the kind of tear down and rebuild that they did, but people forget that at the end of growing all these extraordinary position players as a part of that great rebuild, they also went out and spent huge money to buy John Lester and guys like that in free agency. It's like, are the Rockies going to be able to buy pitching to make the whole thing come together? I don't think so. I think you can do the same thing, but backwards, just with the pitching, these guys that are here, and then, try to go out and find the hitting. But it's going to be fascinating to watch because they're, like I said, it's backwards. The Rockies haven't really been in this position before where they're like, yeah, we're building around our already established, really quality starting pitching.
Yeah. I mean, it is different, and it's backwards from what we've been taught has to take place at Coors Field and what typically has taken place. But to your point, they're not going to go out. The pitchers that will come to Coors Field, you have to either dramatically overpay them, which, as we know, hasn't typically worked, or you're getting somebody who you're keeping your fingers crossed can bounce back and virtually no one else will give them an opportunity. And so you throw some, dollars at them and they resurrect their career. And it's happened a couple of times. I mean, Jason Marquis came here, Sean Estes came here, and both of those guys ended up having, really good seasons with the Rockies. But I think that's more, a more rare type of occurrence than a way to go about your everyday business in building a 26-man roster now.
All right, well, we got to get into this upcoming series. Of course, we'll have plenty more time to talk about all that stuff. Love getting into the future debate. Like you said, imagining ourselves sitting in the front office. And then, of course, doing all of that and remembering at the end there's reasons why none of us are working in front office. It's a tough job, and we all love commenting on it, of course. But, of course, one of the things I love commenting on is the deliciousness of illegal Pete's. I don't need to sell you on illegal Pete's. You know all about them. You just got to go down and get some. Whether you're down there in the ballpark area, there's one nearby. Maybe you're out at the DNVR bar watching the ball game. Either way, there's an illegal Pete's right next to you. And if you've been out to an event, they're really trying to help promote everybody getting back out into Denver. So if it's the ball game you've been to, a concert, a comedy show, whatever, show them the ticket to your event on your phone. If you don't have a physical ticket, whatever, they'll hook you up with a free draft beer or house margarita with the purchase of an adult Andre. Do check them out. Absolutely love Illegal Pete's. I mean, everybody does. You know them, you love them, you dig on them, and you can eat Illegal Pete's while you're on your DraftKings Sportsbook app. I highly recommend doing that, doing a little eating, a little betting, get back over, following the advice of Patrick Lyons, taking the over on the Rockies, not just to win that game, but by 3. He gave you extra special odds on that one, boosted your profits there. So you got to be following along with all that. Follow our DNVR Bets program. You know you're watching all that baseball out there. If you're still watching basketball and hockey, well, particularly the basketball, they'll hook you up with a great promo right now. But really, it's just one of many, many promos that DraftKings is constantly throwing your ways. And by promo, what I mean is they give you free money to bet on whatever you want semi-regularly. And it's super fun, low-stakes betting that just takes a lot of fun addition into the sports watching experience. And sometimes you can end up hitting it big with some of those long odd shots. And if you want to make it higher stakes, obviously that's up to you. I'm just saying low stakes is the way that I go. Download the top rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code DNVR when you sign up to turn $1 into $100 in free credits just by betting on the basketball team of your choice to win their next game. If you do, you will claim $100 in free credits. Promo code DNVR for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. New customers only. Wager paid out in site credits. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. And if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. All right, Goody. So we kind of touched on it a little bit in there, but obviously Nolan Arenado coming back to town, a 4-game set with the St. Louis Cardinals. Both of these teams in kind of an interesting spot. We were talking about it yesterday. Well, the Cardinals have a better record than the Rockies and, could very well easily turn their season around and do whatever. They're a team that's really frustrated and upset right now and sitting in 4th place and not who they should be. Meanwhile, the Rockies are kind of this fun-loving team who's awesome at home. They all seem to really enjoy playing together. And, then you add all of this Nolan stuff on top of it. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting energy flying around the next 4 days. What are you most looking forward to? What are you kind of expecting to see over these next 4 games?
It's funny. I think what I'm looking forward to most is there's going to be great energy in the ballpark. There was great energy there on Monday, certainly great energy Tuesday with what nearly took place, as we were discussing earlier. As difficult as it is for all of us to explain, the Rockies are a good team at home. They're 28-16. They're fun to watch at home. They string together hits. They pitch, as we were discussing, exceptionally well. So I'm looking forward to them because I know those guys, they're geeked up to face Nolan and to face the Cardinals, a tradition-rich team. And I know a team that's, record-wise not where they want to be right now, but it's kind of another measuring stick. And so it goes beyond just, Nolan being back because, when he steps to the plate for the first time tonight, that'll be a moment that, you remember and so forth. But after that, he's probably going to have another, 12, 14 to, if he plays every game, 16, 17 at bats, 18 at bats, whatever it is, plate appearances. And the series goes on. And I look forward to hopefully the Rockies continuing to play well and to pitch well, number one, at home. So, not that it's a sidebar story, Nolan. It's top of the marquee tonight, but you know what? By tomorrow or Saturday, okay, we've seen him and he's in the red uniform, and okay, he's playing at Coors Field and he went 1 for 4 his first ball game and whatever. But now it becomes just another series.
Yeah, it is interesting that the Rockies are kind of on this upswing, especially at home, playing so well. And the last 2, I think, road trips have gone a little bit better than the record has shown, or at least previous road trips have gone. So they're kind of on the come up. And then you've got the Cardinals kind of on the way down a little bit. They did win 3 in a row, but that was against the Diamondbacks, who can't buy a win on the road. And so it is just so interesting. And it's typical of baseball, how you have this team expected to be at the bottom of the NL West against a team expected to be at the top of the NL Central. And yet, in many ways, they're right in the exact same spots. It's a type of narrative. It's stranger than fiction, and that's the beauty that we love about baseball so much.
you don't know. We all want to prognosticate. I think we all naturally, when we do prognosticate, we're influenced heavily by names we are familiar with, even prospect names we're familiar with. Oh, this team's going to be good because they have 5 names that are of star status, and they have 2 guys coming up that the industry believes are going to be impactful. Therefore, they're really good. Yet it doesn't always play out that way. In fact, oftentimes it plays out significantly differently. So again, this is going to be an interesting series. All attention will be on 28. I have a question for you guys. What kind of reaction do you expect when Nolan strides to the plate at sometime around 6:45 this evening?
I think it will be a majority of cheers. I think, the Rockies, I think, are assisting in that, not through any nefarious means, but they're saying, look, this guy was a huge part of our organization. They're going to have the video package going on the screen. And, if there are any people that were kind of on the fence about what they would do, and, if they were maybe still a little upset, but they also remembered some good times, they're going to see that video and go, damn, man, that guy was great. I'm so glad he got to wear the purple pinstripes, and he was a part of my favorite team growing up, and I got to see him. And yeah, you know what? He's back for the first time, and so let me kind of honor him in that way. So I think we'll see, a good majority of cheers more than anything. And it may even be hard to hear some boos. I mean, I think there will be some there, but I think they will pretty much be drowned out by all the people kind of recognizing Nolan's greatness over everything.
Yeah, I'm very curious about this. I've been giving this a lot of thought, actually. It's been kind of a conversation in my orbit for a while, because there are definitely going to be people there who are booing, but Patrick's right. Are they going to get drowned out? I'm inclined to say mostly. You may be able to hear a smattering of them. One of the things that I think we forget in all the conversations of breaking down exactly what he said and exactly what he did and what was reported and how much did he really want out is, like, we forget that sports at their very base level are tribal, and that there are plenty of people who don't really care that much beyond, I'm ride or die Colorado Rockies fan for life, and you're on the other team now. So, so I think sometimes it really is okay that it's just as simple as that for some people. And I know there are people who've, messaged me particularly and said, I really didn't like his comments about the curtain call thing. And I didn't like that he was sending video to Adam Wainwright. It didn't feel like his heart was in it. And I'm going to boo Nolan. And I think that's a perfectly, valid fan reaction to someone you feel like didn't want to be on your team. On the flip side, I think it's a perfectly valid fan reaction if you just go, oh my God, I love Nolan Arenado. I've always loved Nolan Arenado. He can do no wrong. I will cheer my lungs out for him 100%. I don't think either one of those are invalid, but I do wonder to what extent. I think it'll be a comment on, more than anything, to what extent those narratives caught on with fans or didn't. You know what I mean? Like, because I think there's going to be a lot of people who are there who just don't know any of the real details, didn't dive into the reporting about who said what, who did what, and they're just going to react. But I'm very, very curious.
I think, I think, Patrick, you're not, Drew, I agree with both of you. I think that it's going to be, to steal a percentage. I think it'll be 90% plus people, rightfully so, applauding vociferously and honoring how great a tenure he had in Denver. And I think there's always, we live in that society, right? There's always going to be people who are going to say, boo, he didn't want to be here, and find reasons to boo. But I think overwhelmingly it's going to be a positive response. Here's something interesting, fellas. There have been 8 players to play 1,000 games or more in a Rockies uniform. We all know who they are. You know, the Elton Walkers, right? Vinny Castilla, Cargo. Do you know that of those 8, 6 went somewhere else at some point? There's only 2 that never left. Helton, obviously, and the other one you're going to watch tonight.
So far, yeah.
Charlie Blackmon.
Charles, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The other 6 all left. Tulowitzki, Castilla, Hall of Famer Larry Walker, for various reasons. Vinny came back. Vinny works for the club now. You know, Larry is going to be feted and have, as he should, and have his jersey retired later on this year. Tulo, I hope one day, you know, as he gets older and matures, and you know the organization's a little bit different, and you know, obviously he had, you know, a big issue with Jeff Bridich. Jeff no longer works for the Colorado Rockies. I hope at some point in time that can be repaired, because Tulo's a huge part of the history of the Rockies. Cargo, you know, has a strong relationship still with the club, even though he had to leave at some point. This is, as I described when it went down in February or whenever, January, I don't even remember when the deal was. You guys know better than I do. Was it disappointing? Yeah. What do you wish they got a lot more back, at least in terms of name recognition? Absolutely. And I understand the anger and the vitriol and that exists to this day. And I'm sure there are people who won't go because they're so upset still that they've said, you know, I'm done with the organization right now. But having said all of those things, it's part of the business of sports. Very rarely does even the most iconic figures stay in one place, especially in the sport of baseball, which has always been very transient, more transient certainly than the NFL. And I would argue probably even more so than the NBA and the NHL, though there is, you know, tends to be more movement in those sports than the NFL.
Yeah, the NBA has gotten a little bit wild in the last couple of years. Certainly before the last 10 years in the NBA.
And I'm not talking about your journeyman. I'm talking about your star to superstar level player. You know, it's not like often they're playing for 4 or 5 different organizations. Does it happen? Yes, it does. But, you know, baseball tends to be a little bit more transient.
Those pictures that have become memes or whatever, where you've got like Ken Griffey Jr. in his White Sox uniform, or who was the weird like Wade Boggs wearing Tampa Bay Rays. What's the other, like, didn't Reggie Jackson play for a weird team at the end of his? A lot of these
Angels.
Ones, yeah. There's
and it's funny because so like Cargo, like you were saying, Goody, you know, he wasn't that old when he moved on, right? It was only his age 33 year, and so like, all right, he played most of his career, only had, you know, that final season partially in Cleveland and with the Cubs. But, you know, you're right. Like this is just kind of the way of the game, and it's still raw, I think, for some people, and that's why you kind of understand those that 90-10, 80-20, whatever the breakdown is going to be with fans that are cheering versus fans that are booing. Over time, the boos and that negativity or whatever will just kind of go away, and you go, yeah, that did stink. You know, that was a bummer. I would love to have him, you know, had him retire as a Rocky, or at least play out his contract maybe before moving on. But right now is when it's still raw. But you're right. It's just part of the game. It's part of the business, that there is that business aspect. And it's, you know, for the fans, it's their team. All right. Fans say, hey, this is our team, but it isn't necessarily our team for the players, because they are their own business, right? And they have their own fan, or their own team, right? It's their family, right? And so it's so much different. But right now it's still raw for people to kind of
100%.
Understand all of those moving pieces, as it were.
Yeah, 100% that it's raw, and it will be, you know, probably for many for a while. But winning trumps everything, and if ultimately, you know, money is spent in a fashion that maybe is dispersed over, you know, 2, 3, 4 players that help you win more games than you had been winning and get back to the postseason and have success in the postseason, stadium will be filled and people will embrace whoever those guys are, whatever the names are at that point in time. And, certainly I also understand why, people say, well, I have no trust in the people in the organization making those decisions and producing new talent or paying for the right, next generation of players or the next group of players. And they're certainly entitled to that. And the Rockies have made, a number of mistakes in the front office. They've also done some good things, even though I think right now people are loath to, mention those things. Germán Márquez was a Tampa Bay Ray. That turned out to be one hell of a trade. Yeah. One of the, best Rockies of the in their history. DJ LeMahieu was a Chicago Cub. And Theo Epstein, who's going to go to the Hall of Fame, was running the Cubs when he traded DJ LeMahieu along with Tyler Colvin to the Rockies for two guys that never did a thing in a Cubs uniform. So, mixed in with things that you want back, there have been some, good things done, and, we'll see how it plays out certainly going forward. But winning trumps everything, man. We know that. We know that in athletics. Winning makes you have a shorter memory as to the things that pissed you off, 2 years prior.
It's funny what I was going to say before that, your last sentence, but you kind of encompass all those words about winning trumps everything in athletics, because that's not true for the Oakland Athletics. You talked about the fans coming back to the ballpark and whatnot, and yet with the potential for a full capacity crowd, a team that is currently the second wild card team in the American League this week, they had less than 5,000 people come to the ballpark. With
right?
No restrictions. Yes, they had 4,000 and change show up for a team that's battling for the AL West, again, second in the wild card, and their fans aren't there, and they're winning. And so you're right. Winning does trump everything. But I think more to my point, it's that Colorado's got some really solid baseball fans that even when the Rockies maybe aren't going at their best, and maybe when they have fallen on some hard times, they still want to come to the ballpark. They still want to see their Rockies, and they still want to enjoy a day out at the park at the beautiful Coors Field.
I try to look at this, objectively. When we talk about, Phoenix, I watched the Suns eliminate the Clippers last night, and the obligatory references to we have the greatest fans down in the Valley and the Suns fans, and they haven't been in the NBA Finals since Barkley was there in '93, so it's 28 years. And every owner says it, every star will say it to kind of tip their cap to their fan base. And we do know in this region there are great fans, and we love sports, and the Broncos have always been and maybe for who knows how long or forever, who knows, the number one draw of the sports teams in town. But the Avalanche have won cups, the Nuggets have certainly gotten better of late, the Rockies have had their moments. It is a great sports town. It is a great sports town, but is St. Louis a better baseball town? It is, I think. I mean, they're ravenous about the Cardinals. I think if the three of us showed up in a Cardinal uniform, there'd be 40-something thousand people out there every night. But it's not to take a shot at where the Rockies are, because it is a great fan base. It's an unbelievable venue. We live in a beautiful state. That all contributes to people's desire to go to the ballpark. I don't know if you've ever been to the stadium in Oakland, which they've been trying to, get rid of for years. I would prefer to watch it on television.
Same.
A's fan also.
Yeah.
Now, the contrast is, the city by the bay, the Giants, who are having an inexplicably great year and sustaining it, they turn out, and their ballpark is one where you say, hey, let's go. We're going to go watch a good team, and we're going to get to enjoy a wonderful ballpark. You don't have that same feeling in Oakland, unfortunately.
Yeah. I want to close on this, Goody, because I had this thought, and then we got to let you get out of here. But I've always thought this about I've never disagreed about those, great baseball cities and great traditions. I've always thought that one of the things that I love about Rockies fans, and they're not the only ones who are like this, though, is that they don't have that safety net of, well, it was a tough year. We're going through a tough time now. That's okay. They'll turn it around and win a championship eventually. Why? Because they have. The Cardinals, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Cubs even, they hadn't done it for a long time, but they had always been there. You felt like, they're going to get back to the postseason, whatever it may be. A young player like Brendan Rodgers, who you featured on your podcast this week, who a lot of people gave up on after 100 at-bats in Major League Baseball. And part of it isn't just Brendan Rodgers. It's this not necessarily, like you said, having faith that the Rockies can turn this guy into a star player. He needs to be this, he needs to be that. You don't have that safety net. So the Rockies fans who stood by Brendan Rodgers and symbolically through that, their team, through the tough times, through those first 100 at-bats where it looked like he just didn't belong. Now they're reaping the benefits so much harder watching him succeed out there. And it'll be the same the next time. The 30,000 that showed up to watch Harman almost get history, they're going to be there in a couple of years when the team is good again and say, I stuck through those hard times when people were saying there was no chance this play. And so while those other baseball traditions, I get it. I'm not arguing against it. I love that Rockies fans have that. They have to fight through so much more to say, you know what, I'm still through thick and thin going to be there.
That's part of fandom, isn't it? I mean, I made this analogy with you guys several weeks back, or maybe it was a few months ago, maybe when we were talking about the Nolan thing. We're growing up in New York, and, Patrick's a Jersey kid. I was a huge Mets fan, and watching M. Donald Grant trade away Tom Seaver, the franchise, and the late Tom Seaver, just like John Elway 100 years from now will still be the number one Bronco of all time. You bet. I'll take that bet right now. 100 years from now, people go, wait a second. John Elway's the number one all-time Bronco. Babe Ruth, the number one all-time Yankee, right? It's been 100 years. The number one all-time Met will be Tom Seaver, and they traded him away.
Yeah.
And anger. I mean, just right. But you're a Mets fan, man. So all right, who's and you ticked off, and you hated seeing Seaver in a Reds uniform, but you wanted to see the Mets do well. And I think the same thing tonight when we watch on television, and hopefully we have a full house at Coors Field, and we have hopefully the weather holds out. We have a beautiful evening, but you're going to watch and root for the purple, man. You're going to root for the Rockies because that's where we live, and that's our team, as flawed as it may be, as you may not agree with how it's run. You may not agree with many different aspects, but it's your team. It's our community's team, and you want to see it do well, and you've seen some great moments and some great years, and you will again. And this real quick, I'm getting long-winded as I do all the time, but Drew, you mentioned, Brendan Rodgers. In the first 100 at-bats, not good, man, not good. I don't remember him hitting the ball on the barrel. And now you go, wait a second, I'm starting to see what people were talking about. I'm starting to see why he was drafted third. I'll be the first to raise my hand, and I've said this on television. Jonathan Daza, I didn't know if there was enough in his bat, and I know his minor league numbers, but just looking at his approach, and you said, I don't know if this plays out at the big league level.
Same.
Well, now you're kind of intrigued. The same thing for Raimel Tapia. Love how hard he played. Love his bat to ball skills. But you say, maybe he's really on a good team. Maybe he's a fourth outfielder. Does that style play in 2021? Well, now you take a step back and go, what two of the most exciting at-bats are? Two at-bats you really look forward to? When Spilly coined them, Swagger and Dagger.
Love it.
Because the ball's going to be in play. And there's a good chance they're going to find an opening somewhere, and the Rockies may produce some offense.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to put a ceiling on guys or to make a snapshot judgment. And, you guys know this game as well as anyone. It's tough to do that in this sport, because it takes a while for every Juan Soto who rolls up to the big leagues and seems to dominate from Jump Street, it's a process for most of the other guys that reach stardom.
Yeah, Rogers looks set to break out, and he almost said exactly that much when you interviewed him. It was so great hearing the ballpark in the background there, you two guys in the dugout, and hearing the music. You know, you're back in the ballpark is definitely one of my more favorite episodes of the podcast. And like you said, how you have to persevere and you don't want to put ceilings on guys. The one thing that Rogers said in the interview, and I won't spoil it, is just talking about all the advice that he got coming up there in Florida from Dante Bichette himself, you know, before he was even a Rocky player. And even some advice he got from Derek Jeter, not to mention Rogers' relationship with Trevor Story and Ryan McMahon, who's a guy that he was never a contemporary. McMahon was always a couple years older, so he talks about all of that, and he's definitely one to watch in the series as he continues to heat up a little bit this season.
Yeah, he's watching him grow in front of your eyes can be, a wonderful pleasure for a hardcore fan also, as opposed to just putting your arms around the guy who's already an established star. Watching the evolution of a young player, and then not only the individual accomplishments, but then when they become part of team accomplishments, that's one of the great joys of being a sports fan.
Yeah. All right, we'll let you get out of here before wrapping up. Goody, we appreciate you as always. Of course, we'll be tuning in tonight. We'll be definitely tuning in as soon as this podcast is over. Everyone go and download the Drew Goodman podcast and all that good stuff. And drinking all the fun, interesting energy this weekend.
I'm looking forward to it. I know you guys as well, and I always appreciate the time with you. I love being a part of your show once a week. I really do. It's fun. It's something I look forward to. So, because you guys, you engage in different topics, and I learn a lot from listening to you guys. So, my hat's off to you guys. I'll see you. I think I'll see you both this weekend. I'll see you, Patrick, in a little bit, for sure. I know Kreisman's still trying to sell a house. So
that's right. They told me it was easy, man. They told me you could have 12 cash offers within a day. I did not.
All right. It'll happen. I got my fingers crossed for you.
Appreciate you.
All right. I'll see you guys.
See you, Goody.
All right. Do want to mention one last thing from our friends over at Hassel Cattle Company. Of course, they got Wagyu beef that could change your life. It's absolutely delicious. They're not treating their cows with antibiotics or hormones or any of that garbage that ends up in your body, makes all stuff bad for them. It's bad for the environment. All this terrible crap that happens when you buy stuff from the grocery store. No reason to do that. Get better beef that's better for you, tastes better, and oftentimes doesn't even cost as much. It can be a lot cheaper when you take advantage of the promo. So go to Hassel Cattle Company. It's HASSELL cattlecompany.com. Use promo code DNVR10 to get 10% off. If you end up getting over $200, you'll get free shipping. Highly recommend it. Clear out the freezer space. Load up on ground beef, ground chuck, award-winning hamburgers, beef bacon, steaks that will blow your mind. Again, if you're a beef eater and you're not getting your beef from Hassel Cattle Company, you're probably paying too much for stuff that's not as good. Bad business model. Go to HASSELL cattlecompany.com. And again, that's promo code DNVR10 to get 10% off and free shipping on orders over $200.
Get your stake in DraftKings Sportsbook to win a couple bucks, and then get your literal stake from Hassel Cattle Company.
I will say it's hilarious that my mother jumped into the comments to totally undercut my point, but she's right. For the other way, if you want to go, judge baseball cities by how easy it is to find the game on TV anywhere and people talking baseball. That's where you're going to find Denver much lower on the list. But that's one of the reasons why we created the DNVR bar and places like that, because there's mutual responsibility here. Like, someone has to help foster and create culture as well. And yes, the Rockies could do a better job of that, but so could other local media. Well, whatever. We can't take control of what other people do. We can only take control of what we do. There's culture down at the DNVR bar, and you never have to ask them to put the game on. I was ecstatic when I was in there last week, and a bunch of people watching the Rockies play a day game. middle of the day in a bar that anywhere else in town would have been totally empty. And there's a solid crowd, bunch of people hanging out, watching baseball, even though the team's not good. So
yeah, and we get together on Discord and we have conversations there, not even just about the Rockies, but that's that spot where, hey, if you can't get down to the bar, or if you're one of those folks that are live in Albuquerque, we've got folks from Europe even that are a member of our community, and so you can kind of rub elbows with those guys, get some interesting and different perspectives. We even talk about soccer and everything going on with the Euro, but you're right. We're doing everything we can at DNVR to kind of cultivate the next generation in a sense of really good, not just baseball fans, but sports fans in this market, because we just need to have more options, or just have an option. And the DNVR bar is an option, and sometimes the only option when you want to watch the Rockies right now.
Yeah, Nuggets fans feel that too, having been a hardcore Nuggets fan there for a while, and I'm not as into it as I used to be, but it's been rough for them as well. And that same thing, like they have actual basketball culture in other places, and like they're great, just like with the great basketball fans in Denver and great baseball fans. It's where do they manifest that culture? So coming.
I wonder if. And maybe I certainly don't think this would be the total difference maker, but this idea of there's nowhere that you can have a pregame tailgate for a Rockies game. Like that doesn't exist where it does in a lot of other cities, a lot of older cities. And so you got to think, man, that would be something. Then again, I don't know that we could get enough people to get like a Kickstarter going or a GoFundMe. Like, hey, let's just buy a lot of land near the stadium. We're not going to put anything on it. We're just going to leave it flat for people to put their grills and to park there. Great concept, maybe as an idea, but it's even worse on paper.
Yeah. Too bad, because tailgating as a concept. I was out there obviously in Milwaukee for the NLDS.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah. It was. I was like, okay, this looks like a whole lot of fun. Really, no, but there isn't a spot, as far as geography goes in Lodo. At least there's a bunch of cool bars there. It could be worse. It could be Chavez Ravine, and there's nothing in the neighborhood.
And maybe, and it's somewhat recent, I think, and maybe by recent, we're talking 10 years or so. That you can go down to Lodo at Coors Field and get that kind of tailgate, right? It's not the literal variety, but the same is true in Chicago. You go to a Cubs game, if you're in Wrigleyville there's just the bars that are all around the stadium that are open at 10 a.m. where you can get a brat and a brick brew. Right. And it's like, okay, this is that, pregame experience that you get excited for. And granted, you might not make you more passionate, because Cubs fans are somewhat passionate, but they don't call it the world's largest singles bar for nothing. People go there to have a good time, hang out, do all that stuff, and that's fine. But again, it's more recent that you can go and say, I'm actually can spend the entire day. I can spend the entire day at Coors Field, going to things in and around Lodo, or going grabbing a burger or whatever it is at the DNVR bar and places like that. So, maybe this is just the start of it. Maybe that kind of baseball culture is really only just starting to begin a little bit with, first generation fans that since they've been born, there's been a team. Whereas for people of a certain age, there wasn't always baseball around.
Right.
The Rockies
it didn't exist yet.
They didn't exist. Or when they did exist, it was like, but I've got my allegiance already to the Giants, because, they were a big powerhouse in the late 80s. Or, I'm used to watching at Atlanta on TBS. And so now, maybe this is really, this generation, in a sense, can be the start of some kind of change in the culture for the Rockies fandom and whatnot going forward.
I think so. And I do see it growing and getting better and more complete. And I think you're right that, and even starting to become a second generation thing now, because there's people my age. I don't have kids, but there's plenty of people my age who do. And, I joined T-ball the year the Colorado Rockies became teams. Both my parents who love baseball their whole life. Yeah, they root for the Rockies, but they have their own teams. They have their other teams. The Royals and the A's, or whoever dad rooted for on any given year.
The honorary Giants.
Yeah.
No? Oh.
So, but yeah, now we're also for the first time, like really right now in the last 5 or 6 years here, we're getting the second generation Colorado Rockies fans, and that's fun too. So
Takes time. Yeah, takes time.
We'll keep cultivating that. Bring your second generation Rockies fan to the DNVR bar, but they can't have any Breck brews. They're too young for that stuff. But it is a family friendly environment to eat and watch the game and hang out and again help us create that culture. That's what we're doing here. It's one of the biggest reasons why you should subscribe to the DNVR.com. Yes, you do get access to all the written content. You get to come hang out with us in the Discord channel, but really you just get to be a part of a family that, whether it's good times or bad times, are going through the same things as you and are there to hash it all out as a team together. So we appreciate all of you who are already members of the family. Do consider becoming one today at the DNVR.com. Make sure you're following us on social media at Patrick D. Lyons, at Drew Kreisman, at DNVR_Rockies. And of course, just continue to be absolutely awesome baseball fans out there. We promise we'll keep being absolutely Patrick Lyons and Drew Kreisman in here. And until next time, we will see you at the ballpark.